So 30 days ago, to this very day, Donald Trump signed what he called a historic deal with Iran. Peace and diplomacy. The Strait of Hormuz was once again open for business. Trump said it was going to be beautiful. But this week we've seen the most intense round of strikes between both as we return to war, and Iran has told the Houthis to prepare to close a second one. Not a nuclear weapon, and not a missile strike on a US base, although there's plenty of that. This is a choke point, a different choke point, and because apparently one wasn't enough. And this is what I want to focus on in today's video, because I think a lot of the coverage out there is missing the real story here. This isn't about whether Trump's deal failed or worked, it's pretty clear where that is. It's about what Iran learned and is learning whilst Trump was trying to force it through. And what they're learning, the Iranians, is considerably more dangerous than anything they had before going into this war. There's a lot here to unpack.
This is the Global Gambit.
Now, if you want to understand where escalation is actually heading in the Iranian-US conflict, not the spin or White House press briefings, then you need to subscribe, because I'm going to be covering in this video some things that you definitely haven't considered. And as this war continues to escalate once again, things are moving fast. So be sure to be in the know by clicking that subscribe button and the like button if you enjoy what you hear. But also let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. Has the United States given Iran the greatest clarity that it has had in decades? Now, let me start with what Trump actually offered Iran, because it was, and I say this without any exaggeration, the most generous terms any American president has ever put on the table for anything, let alone towards the arch rival that is the Islamic Republic. Now, in exchange for opening the Strait of Hormuz and abandoning all nuclear ambitions, America offered Iran hundreds of billions of dollars in sanctions relief, investment, and economic rehabilitation. Reactions from Iran hawks in Washington or Tel Aviv of Israel told you everything. They were horrified. No other American leader has surrendered this much and would ever surrender this much. Yet, Iran said no. Not because the money wasn't real. Moderates in Tehran, and that's a relative term here, apparently understood exactly what was on offer. But the hardliners won this argument. The new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who has been barely seen, or hasn't been seen, has been issuing hardline pronouncements. Either he agrees with squeezing America for more, or he is under the thumb of those who want to stick with war over peace. But here's the thing that nobody is saying clearly enough. Iran's refusal wasn't irrational. It's anything but. It was strategic. And the strategy becomes obvious the moment you look at what happened next. You see, Trump's offer taught Iran something it had been trying to figure out for a long time. What is its real deterrent, its biggest asset? What is the one asset that makes America blink? Now, for years, the answer will have seemed obvious to not just Iranian thought leaders, but also policymakers in the West. Nuclear weapons. Build that bomb and nobody touches you. North Korea proved it. Pakistan proved it. The entire logic of Iran's nuclear program was built on this assumption. But Trump has proved it wrong and is continuing to consolidate that. America launched one of the most intense bombing campaigns against Iran in recent history. It was supposed to topple the regime. All it did was strengthen the hardliners. The funeral for those who killed drew enormous crowds. Ali Khamenei and his funeral saw nationalism surge. And then Trump came back, not with more pressure, but with the most generous peace offer in American diplomatic history on anything. The lesson Iran drew from that sequence is pretty clear and not subtle. Military pressure followed by generous terms tells you that America is more afraid of the economic consequences of this conflict than Iran is afraid of the military ones. The nuclear deterrent was always a bluff that required actual building of the bomb. The Strait is the deterrent Iran already has. And unlike nuclear weapons, which invites things like preemptive strikes, international isolation, and decades of sanctions, Closing a shipping lane is reversible, deniable, and, most of all, extraordinarily effective. Trump didn't contain Iran's strategic ambitions. He clarified them. And this is something I've been saying for months at this point, that Iran's biggest asset, aside from perhaps the Strait of Hormuz specifically, is its geography. Geography is incredibly important when it comes to international relations, strategic decision making. That's why it is called geopolitics. But here's where it gets considerably more alarming. Because Iran isn't threatening one choke point anymore. It's actually now threatening two. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 1/5 of global energy supplies. When Iran disrupted it, the consequences were immediate. Oil prices surged, shipping companies rerouted, insurance costs spiked, and the global economy felt it within weeks. That's the weapon Iran has been openly brandishing. But this week, Reuters reported something that changes the entire picture. Iran is now instructing Yemen's Houthis to prepare to close the Bab el-Mandab, the strait connecting the Gulf of Aden to the Red Sea, and therefore the Suez Canal. Missiles and drones have already been deployed near the waterway. The Houthis are apparently only awaiting the order, although it's not sure whether they will follow through. But you'll have to subscribe to see more on that in future episodes. Now, the Bab el-Mandab currently carries approximately 7% of global energy supplies, less than Hormuz, but here's the detail that makes this more alarming in another way. When Iran disrupted Hormuz, Saudi Arabia, which had been rerouting the bulk of its energy exports through the Gulf, redirected approximately 70% of its energy to the Red Sea port of Yanbu through Bab el-Mandab. So, Saudi Arabia, in trying to escape one Iranian trap in response, has walked its energy exports directly into a potential second one. Now, this is not a coincidence. That is Iran watching the response to Hormuz, identifying where the traffic went, and positioning accordingly. It is the difference in timelines that the Iranians operate versus Donald Trump. The Houthis, whom years of Saudi strikes and American sanctions were supposed to have degraded into irrelevance, are still very capable of disrupting Bab el-Mandab shipping, even if they cannot fully close it. Their previous campaign demonstrated that repeated attacks, or even the credible threat of them, push major shipping companies to reroute around the entirety of Africa. This adds weeks to journey times, drives up insurance and freight costs, and applies sustained economic pressure across the globe. So, two choke points simultaneously, covering between them a substantial share of global energy and now trade flows. Iran doesn't need a nuclear weapon. It has something more immediate, more usable, and more economically devastating than anything a simple bomb could ever. But this is the part of the story that I think is genuinely being underreported. And if you're finding this useful, then do, of course, hit that subscribe button and know when more videos of this level are coming out. You won't find this kind of information in the mainstream media. So, simply, what does America do now? Because the assessments this week are pretty blunt. Trump has no options, no good ones at least. And having read through the different analyses, I don't think they're wrong. On the one hand, you have military escalation. A return to all-out war doesn't hold much promise. The intense fighting in February was supposed to topple their regime. It didn't. It strengthened the hardliners, handed them this nationalist cause. Another round would probably bring an even stronger result of the same kind. Alternatively, there's been discussion of seizing Karg Island. Yes, that bit of landmass that was all the rage back in April. I was planning a trip down there myself for some winter sun, and then suddenly flights were discontinued. Now, this island is Iran's main oil export terminal, and it's been floated as an option. But American forces on Karg would be a sitting target for Iranian missiles and drones. It's the kind of idea that sounds decisive in a briefing room, but catastrophic in practice. Therefore, Trump proposed levying American tolls on ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. But within hours, wiser heads in the administration prevailed and pointed out how comprehensively foolish that idea was. So he reversed it, he tacoed, and that's reassuring in the sense that at least someone in the room was paying attention. Giving Iran what it wants is equally terrible, though. Acquiescing to Iranian control over international waters sets a precedent that every adversary on the planet is watching. Abandoning Gulf states to Iranian pressure sends a signal to allies everywhere about what American security guarantees are actually worth. And so, negotiating further, offering Iran even more, that risks rewarding a strategy of deliberate escalation in ways that will make every future negotiation harder. If pressure followed by generous terms produces a second choke point threat, what does a second round of pressure followed by even more generous terms produce? The MOU itself has become the problem. It was deliberately ambiguous about who controls the strait. For Iran, it implies Iran is in charge. For America, it means Iran must not restrict traffic. That ambiguity wasn't an oversight. It was the price of getting both sides to sign. And now it's the fault line. The conflict is being fought along. So, as we usually do, let's step back and look at the big picture. The immediate military exchanges and all of this, how does it actually impact on what Iran has strategically achieved in the past 6 months? Iran has survived the most intense American bombing campaign since the Iraq War. It strengthened its hardliners domestically, it extracted the most generous peace terms, and it identified the strait, not the bomb, as its real strategic deterrent, or perhaps nuclear option. Positioned a second choke point as a follow-on threat, and it is demonstrating to every regional actor watching that American pressure, applied without clear strategic objectives, produces concessions rather than compliance. The nuclear program was always a means to an end. The end was strategic relevance, the ability to impose costs on adversaries significant enough that they preferred accommodation to confrontation. Iran has now found a faster, cheaper, more immediate deployable version of that deterrent, and it didn't need a centrifuge to do it. Trump came into this conflict believing he could do what no other previous president had managed, force Iran to the table on American terms. What he actually did was run a live experiment that answered definitively the question Iran has been trying to answer for decades. What makes America blink? Now Iran knows, and that knowledge doesn't expire when the MOU does. The MOU gives 60 days for a deal. We're halfway through. There's been no progress on any nuclear question, no resolution of the strait ambiguity, and Iran is now threatening a second choke point. Indeed, it certainly looks like there is no end in sight, much like the growing rate of my own hair. But just while America is still trying to figure out what game it's playing, Iran is still 3 moves ahead. I'll be watching this every day, and I'll be here when that next move comes tomorrow, heck, maybe in the next few hours. But if this gave you something to think about, drop a like. It genuinely helps. And I have something coming up this week that you'll not want to miss. So be sure to subscribe and support the channel. It's free, but means a lot. We'll see you then. Take care. See you soon.